what we're going to do here is sort of a family heirloom. We're going to build this house for your next gen and their next gen. And by the way, that's your green agenda. That's your sustainability. We're going to build this house once. It'll last 150, 250 years. Who knows? This isn't a 30 or 40-year house like all these others. This home is going to be built once, and that's your contribution to this planet for the next couple of centuries.
Welcome to Titans of Trade. I'm your host, Constance Studd, and today we welcome a very notable architect whose works are synonymous with California sophistication. Welcome, Grant C. Kirkpatrick.
Thank you so much, Constance. Great to join you today.
Yes, I have had the pleasure of writing about your works, walking through them, and it's funny. There's a homeowner who gave me a quote once, and I always remembered it, and I just want to kind of bring it up. He was talking about how he lives in one of your homes. He's been a purveyor of quite a few KAA homes, and he always feels himself instantly relaxing when he walks in. And he said, "My theory on this is that there's such an attention to detail and design. It results in a symmetry and a perfection that when you drink in the aesthetic visually, it calms you." So
wow.
How many decades did it take for you to be able to pull that off?
Well, that's awfully nice. I think we ought to make a song out of that. That has right? It's poetic at the very least.
Exactly.
No, I love to hear stuff like that. You know, I've been doing this for a while, and it's just a labor of love, and or maybe it's a love of labor. I'm not quite sure, because it's just, when you get to do these things and people like that entrust you with, what's going to end up being the largest, after-tax discretionary expenditure of their life, more than likely. It's important that that comes out on the other side with something that has that kind of effect, right? Something that's soothing and feels like yours and home. And I think a big part of that is craftsmanship. It's a little, I think all of us architects say craft and craftsmanship, but the truth is it's harder and harder to do and to find. And I think part of that's because of being able to value it, right? I mean, we it's inert in us human beings to craft. We all have that deep within us. And in the art of homemaking in many cultures, it's paramount. Our culture through the years has made other things paramount, and craft has I think fallen off the priority list. So I can't do that for whatever reason. I'm sure it goes, of course, back to mom and dad or something, right? But whatever reason, these homes have to be crafted. They have to have the human element, not just the machine element in the buried within it. And I appreciate his sentiments or her sentiments. I'm not sure who that was, but that's a wonderful quote.
I'm thinking of your homes and your firm's homes. Yours have to go beyond just looking sleek and eye-catching and interesting. There's an inside-out approach, that goes down to materials. For instance, on this home, this is 308 The Strand we were talking about. But he was just talking about, one of your homes in general. But this conversation was about that home. And in that one, you used a board form concrete. Can you tell us about this? Because it had a lot to do with the home and the success of the execution. Yeah.
Sure. And just as a lead into that question, Constance, our client for that home, she was amazing. She actually had this thing about creating a home where if a herd of elephants came through, it would be okay.
Right.
And that speaks to craftsmanship. She was radar up on that from the very beginning.
Right.
And the board form is a great example of that. So, I learned about concrete when I was 12 years old. My folks remodeled our house, and it was just a 1,400 square foot ranch house, and they remodeled it. And these guys dig trenches, and the trucks show up with his goop and pour it in these trenches, and it hardens. And, I just thought that was so fascinating. And ever since then, concrete's always been this really amazing, elastic, moldable material. It also happens to be incredibly strong. And it's also because of its combination with both steel and concrete is great here in Southern California for lateral loads or earthquakes. And what we like to do in searching for a home with a timeless aesthetic, a timeless way to, survive the decades as, not being trendy or being of its, of its time, but for all time. Part of that is, again, the craftsmanship. Concrete, it turns out, if it's crafted, if it's formed right, is beautiful. And it's especially beautiful because an industrial material against a warmer material like stone or wood, that contrast and that juxtaposition is really, that's part of the beauty that our eye picks up on and part of the permanence with that play. So if you take the formwork, the actual wood forms that concrete is poured into, and you give them some craftsmanship, you give them some attention to detail, like using the right wood, sandblasting it so the various grain textures get a little bit, more pronounced or less pronounced. And you can end up, when you pour that goop in there, it can turn out to be beautiful, textured, the way it captures light in the afternoon, all different types of things can really be special.
When you mentioned that your parents had used concrete, when you were just a wee lad, you've been doing this for a long time. You're like a contemporary OG. So you've been, it's what is it, 35 years since you were doing, is it contemporary homes like as far back in the 80s or 90s?
Yeah. We actually did that triplex, the condominium triplex behind what used to be Sunsets and now is the Strand House. That was 1989. So yeah, it's been, I mean, I hate to say it, but it's been 37 years, but it seems like yesterday. It's all gone so fast. Like they say, time flies, right?
Do you have a certain perspective, considering you've been doing it for so long? It's kind of like a ballet dancer on point. You know what I mean? You've been there for so long. So you just have this level of experience just because you've been doing it longer than maybe other people.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, in our industry, there's no substitute for experience.
Right.
It is what it is. But I was doing rather contemporary work back in the 80s when, it wasn't a thing. I think I've been pleased and proud and just being a part of what has become a decade over decade movement of quality contemporary work in the South Bay. I think, we went through our phase in the 80s and the 90s. It was all kind of what I call Manhattan-Terranean or Manhattan. And look, there's nothing wrong with the more traditionally based work. We used to do a lot of that ourselves. But I feel like the ability for timeless, warm, modern architecture it lies in a few critical tenets that we have managed to really hone through the years. I've always said if I'm going to do a home on the Strand or a home anywhere in the South Bay, I live here, and I don't want to walk by them in 10 years or 20 years and go, oh boy, what was I thinking, right? So it's important. Each project's unique. Each project is a marriage of that particular piece of property and our client's lifestyle. But there are a lot of common ingredients to this, to what we do. We have a bag of tricks or a toolbox. We've never done the same project twice, which is what gets you up in the morning. But nevertheless, there are some threads that our clients do want to ensure make it through in a KAA home. And I think that's shown through the years. We're continually honing our craft. And what's really beautiful in the last 10 plus, maybe 15 years, there's this crazy, interesting international focus on what is called the California lifestyle. And what I've learned it means is, like in Australia, California is an adjective. And it really talks about an indoor-outdoor lifestyle. And all over the world, people desire that lifestyle. They've seen it. Maybe they saw it on a show or in the movies, or visited or been to hotels that exude that kind of thing. So we've been the lucky beneficiary of having inquiries from all over the world to do what we do here, which is really explore and push that indoor outdoor lifestyle.
Right.
Even though here, of course, it's a very appropriate climate for that, but we have projects in Washington, D.C., for instance. There
Right.
might be 2 or 3 months of the year where it's appropriate to have that California lifestyle, but that's what they
Right.
want.
Yeah.
And in a lot of these places, projects in Caribbean, Costa
Mhm.
Rica,
Mhm.
London, Dubai. We just started a project in Japan. These are places that they want that. It may be
Mhm.
a shorter time of the year, but they truly desire to live in that kind of bleeding of the indoor and outdoor. I think COVID probably cranked it up a notch,
Mhm.
right? Hopefully we're learning the European restaurant that people like to dine outdoors, and we're leaving our dining terraces
Mhm.
in the beach cities. But yeah, it's a very interesting thing that all over the world, people are looking to us. How do you live? What do you do next?
Right.
And by the way, it's not just architecture, right? It's food, certainly entertainment, it's fashion. There's a lot of creative industry and movement that people are looking to California for.
Yeah. And when your firm started building outside of California and maybe even going internationally, was it daunting to take the KAA, you know,
Yeah.
protocol, as it were, and like, wow, all right, new landscape here?
Uh, no, it wasn't daunting because folks
Mhm.
really want what we do, right? They
Mhm.
want a version, they want their version, an authentic version of what they do. What we're always careful to do is wherever we work, we are really mining the local community, the local context, the local customs and
Mhm.
traditions, and making sure that this isn't just a California house plopped in, on the hillside of,
Mhm.
in Costa Rica, or anywhere for that matter. So there is a research part of the process that sort of coincides, it runs concurrently to helping our clients tell their story. We have a
Yeah.
very sort of proprietary process that we've developed through the years that we take our clients through to create the vision for the project before we
Mhm.
ever start designing it. It's almost like creating a script for a movie before you start making the sets and then filming it. There's a story to be told for every property and every client's lifestyle that's unique, and you want the eventual home to use that as its main premise for development. um, and so that happens internationally, and it's really fun. A home we're just completing in Dubai is using part of the petrified sandstone monuments that are just outside the city. To the south, there are these really interesting petrified sandstone dunes, and part of that was very influential in the form and the stone, which is going to get mined from there. We're into finishes now for the project. So not unlike Aman Resorts. Aman is Sanskrit for of the, Aman Puri, the Indians, or Aman Giri. Maybe Giri is the one with the Indians.
Uh-huh.
But every Aman hotel that is developed with its locality and context in mind. And that's what we've always been trying to do with these homes. It's really a hopefully authentic way to create something timeless.
That's exciting. I can't wait to see that project. So you're a third generation Los Angeles citizen. And tell me about that. Like growing up, it must have been fascinating if you were interested in architecture early and to be able to go and see all these fabulous, kind of kind of the founding fathers of art, of contemporary architecture.
That is true. I was born in Long Beach. My father was born in Long Beach. My grandfather was born in the year 1900 in Long Beach, and we've, I'm an Angelino through and through. I tried to go to college somewhere else. They wouldn't let me in. I went to USC and couldn't be more grateful. And what's interesting is that, when my folks remodeled their house when I was 12, which, I really found fascinating. They did it in a sort of modern ranch style. They did, walls of glass instead of doors and windows in walls. And it was very influential for me. I then subsequently found myself at the USC School of Architecture, and the modernist program there is very strong. In fact, the case study movement, the original John Intenza Arts and Architecture magazine case study movement, there were 22 case study homes that were built over, I think, the course of 11 or 12 years. And 11 of those, exactly half of them, were either USC grads, alums, or professors. So there's always been a very strong connection to the sort of pushing the envelope with technology and materials, and living in a modern way. So I've always been a part of that thought process. We've had some, I think, in Southern California, the modernist movement. You could go all the way back to Frank Lloyd Wright with the textile block homes and his proteges, Neutra and Schindler, who were pushing that in the 20s. And, it goes into the 50s with the case study movement and Pierre Koenig and, some of the Eames and some amazing architects. And in the later years, you had, Gregory Ain and then it moves on to Steve Ehrlich and I think at some point in time, we picked up the torch and we're carrying that modernist movement forward. And I suspect we're handing it off to others at the very same time. There's some wonderful architects that we're lucky to have in the community now. They're doing really, really good work. So it's fun to be a part of that legacy and a part of that agenda, and to feel as if you're helping move it along for its next incarnations.
Yeah, and speaking of, how are KAA homes? How do they fit in? Like, where have the threads been picked up and built upon? I'm so interested in this. You talk about those names you just mentioned. They're exciting, even to hear the names of those homes, because you think about the homes themselves and just the innovation and how they were meant to be replicated often.
Sure.
Many of the homes were meant for people of all budgets, modest budgets, and just what they did is just very exciting. It's perpetually exciting.
We operate with a certain playbook, if you will. When we start a project, again, the storytelling process is very, very important to us. I often say that in the beginning, we're a little bit more of archaeologists than we are architects. We're helping mine our client's story, digging up the essence of why we're doing this. What are we trying to achieve? What are the things that that influence you? And we put this together and build this story, and then it gets woven with a whole series of things. Certainly, I've mentioned craft, and I've mentioned indoor-outdoor connection. Those are paramount to our work. But there's some other things that might be a little more subtle. There's something we call levitate. You'll see in a lot of our homes that there are volumes that cantilever, that leap out over the view or over the beach or over something. It gets you that feeling of levitation, right? It's exciting. You'll see that our roofs soar like bird wings. We're always paying super careful attention to, often our homes have a lot of glass. The glass needs cover, it needs shade, and it needs protection, mostly from the birds, but also from the sand, the coastal, sand and whatnot. So we pay very careful attention to that rim of the brim of the hat, if you will, that's on the homes that the eye catches. There's something we call whimsy and perfection, which is a tenet that you probably pick up on in our work, where our homes are certainly sophisticated and elegant, but they don't want to take themselves too seriously. It's life, and we're
Hmm.
constantly integrating things. In some cultures you could call it wabi sabi. There's the perfect and the celebration of the imperfect. And a lot of times we'll embrace that imperfection. We'll actually pick up on it, or push it to another level, or we'll involve some type of whimsy that that I often call it the one eyebrow raiser. Just is sort of curious, sort of curious in terms
Uh,
of what that takes the edge off, right?
mhm.
Brings the home a personality and some
Ah,
character. And most of the time, those are things we're picking up on from our clients. Where one of our clients had in their former home, they had a statue of the three pigs, and the three pigs are dancing. And they had it for a long time, and it was right at their foyer. And we said, okay, so where are we going to incorporate that? That's fantastic. And they said, no, 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 that we've had that forever. And I said, let me ask you something. When people come over, if they haven't been to your house before, what do they say about that? And he said, well, mostly they just kind of giggle. I said, that is so you guys. That has to come with us. That's got to
mhm.
make it into the new house. And we'll celebrate it in a slightly different way. So you'll see things like that. You'll see, swings, or water elements, or things that that we identify at a human level and a human scale to bring some whimsy, some imperfection into the picture. It also helps people. Homes are always, we're taking care of them, right? There's a maintenance factor to homes. And a lot of times you want to bring the attention to things where, you don't have to worry about it. Skylights that bring light in, but that aren't visible from the inside. Things that don't require as much attention,
Mhm.
that are built to last.
Yeah.
I often say to our clients, what we're going to do here is sort of a family heirloom. We're going to build this house for your next gen and their next gen. It'll look just as good. And by the way, that's your green agenda. That's your sustainability. We're going to build this house once. It'll last 150, 250 years. Who knows? But this isn't a 30 or 40-year house like all these others. This
Right.
home is going to be built once, and that's your contribution to this planet for the next couple of centuries. We'll use FSC certified materials.
Ah.
We'll use, geothermal and solar and all the things that are reasonable to incorporate in these homes today. But the real way to make a an impact on this planet. Let's do it right, and let's do it once.
I love that. That makes a lot of sense. Your most recent book, Residing with Nature, which was done with KAA partner Duan Tran, when you guys had to just shift through all the work that you have done
Mm.
collectively, what did you guys say? We have this criterion, or was it just like, I love this one, I love this one? What was the process by which you
Yeah,
picked projects?
great question, Constance. I will tell you that at first it's not easy, right? We've probably, I don't know, we've done 35 strand homes, in the last 30 plus years. We've done dozens and hundreds of others. And each one of them's kind of your baby, right? We put
Mhm.
our heart and soul into these things, and eventually a published book is going to be 248 pages, or maybe 256. There's a whole set of rules behind it. We've done a few of them,
Mhm.
um, and that only leaves room for so many. In Residing with Nature, that was 12, and we had to cull down to 12 projects that we thought would play nicely together in what we were trying to communicate about the work, which is its connection to nature and all things natural. And eventually, not even eventually, rather quickly, it became a really fun project. It did take us a couple of years. There were lots of sessions. There were lots of things pinned up on the wall that we're looking at and starting to narrow it down. We did it both physically and digitally, but it's kind of rewarding to sift everything down to some of the best and package it up in a beautiful volume. And I found it kind of an unexpected celebration of, years and years of work. And of course, that stuff that's in the book. Let's see, Residing with Nature was published a year and a half ago. And California Contemporary was published, I believe, in 2012. No, 15, I'm sorry. That's all right. Both of those books, and we had a few before that, like Residing with Nature has these 12 projects in them. Those projects we designed probably 7, 8, 10 years ago. They were built, 3, 5, 7 years ago. And then, there are projects that are coming up, obviously, that are under construction and on the boards. And I think what I'm always trying to communicate to our team here is, we're super lucky. That stuff in the book is terrific, but the stuff that's under construction right now, honestly, it's even better. And the stuff that's on the boards that isn't under construction yet, that's better than that stuff. And I can say that honestly because in our business, you're constantly honing your craft. You're literally, if you're diligent and you're not resting on your toes and you're pushing to keep, the work relevant, and pushing to go beyond, right? To have unique and prototypical types of ideas and things coming forward, and ways to use materials and be sustainably conscientious, and source locally and do all these cool things that are now more standard than not. You're having to constantly hone your craft, and so it's really rewarding to think about it in those stages. We have things that we're designing right now that I'm just so excited about. It's really pretty amazing. And a lot of them are here, Southern California, but a lot of them are, they're very prolific places like Montecito, La Jolla, Palm Desert, and La Quinta. In the Rockies right now, we have projects in Montana, Utah. They're super fun. I mean, that's sort of modern, rustic. We call it dirty modern.
Wow.
And then elsewhere, as I mentioned, and I'm a little bit fortunate because most of the work we did in our first 20, 25 years was here locally, and I didn't have to get on planes. I got on planes for fun. Now it's changed, but my kids are gone. We're empty nesters, and I don't have to worry about tucking them into bed or reading them a story, and I'm able to travel a little bit more. And it's exciting. It's always exciting to go to different places and to mine the history and the culture and do something that adds to that.
Exactly. And I find it interesting after all these years, like it must be really, really fun because it's like a jazz musician who's a maestro. I'm theorizing that at this point you've come up against there's only a finite number of issues, right? And you've probably dealt with them and sweated it out all those years. And now you can go and kind of just improvise. Is that how it feels? Or
Sure. No, it does. I mean, after getting close to 40 years of honing the craft, there's a lot of things that we have managed to create systems and efficiencies and economies with.
Right.
And yet, things change constantly. I mean, I was just down in Costa Rica, and we're using the Guanacaste tree as the wood flooring for this home. And it's a beautiful wood. It's very hard, very durable. But it has a completely unique characteristic in terms of how you cut it and how its grain shows up. So I've been learning all about that to make sure that, we get it right, that it folds into the larger vision and goals for the project. And there's something like that in every project that we do. The project right now in Japan is particularly fascinating. It's just outside of Tokyo. And as most of our clients say, we want a KAA home. We want what you do. And so well, absolutely, but it's got to be a KAA home is something that speaks to its locale, right? It's the genus loci, if you will. It's about the place. It's your lifestyle married to that place, as we were talking about. So that's always new and different, and frankly, it's a lot of fun. I feel really blessed. Then people say, well, you've done so many Strand homes. Why do you want to do another one? God, every time we do a home on the Strand or the beach section, it's a 33-foot by 100-foot lot, and it's a puzzle every time. Everyone's different. I have to make sure they're unique. I'm not going to do the same home that we did next door or down the street. And so I think that never gets old. Figuring out the unique answer, the unique puzzle, the design for a unique set of circumstances, even though it's in a virtually the same place. It's always challenging, and from the challenge comes something really terrific.
That makes a lot of sense. It's almost like there's a formula and the variables change each time. But the variables are different. You're working with a
Yeah.
whole new set. It's kind of like lifestyle, topography, but these are never the same.
That's correct. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
There is unfortunately no formula to what we do. There are some threads, as we talked about.
Right.
There are some processes, but it's so far from formulaic.
Right.
There are a lot of architecture firms that operate much more formulaically, and it's fine. I mean, they help and serve a very relevant, important marketplace. I would often say that our work is almost the exact opposite. We're usually being challenged with a very unique property and unique desire for something, more akin, more connected to our client and their lifestyle.
They're all so different, and it's fascinating having written about them. Like I remember seeing one in Palos Verdes, and then once you dig into it and the homeowner is talking to you about it, I'm like, KAA, but it doesn't visually look like another home. But
Yeah.
the quality there and the sensibility, the sense of how it embraces the landscape, it's like, and then there's a certain level of execution that then you go, okay, yes, that's a KAA. Yeah. How do you keep your personal creative fires? Like, how do you fuel that? Like, are you off? You're a winemaker, or are you a marathon runner, or do you work that way? Where you
I
just
ran a marathon once and practically died,
okay,
just like the original guy. No, you know what? First of all, architecture and what I do, we only do homes, but we're really blessed with some really terrific opportunity and challenges, and so for me, it doesn't feel like work, and us architects, we don't turn the switch off. So everywhere we travel, and my wife and I do a lot of travel, and I do a lot of business travel. But we're always absorbing, learning, sketching, doing different things. We do have, in answer to your question, we do have a boutique vineyard, and we are winemakers. We have a label called William Robert Wines out of Paso Robles, California. And we make a couple of different varietal wines off of our estate vineyard. And so I'm a farmer. So that's probably the best answer I could give you to my other life. But there are so many connections to what we do in the vineyard and what I do as an architect. The connection to nature is obviously very clear. But if you think about a vineyard and you think about this idea of these natural rolling hills, and over it, we place a perfect grid, right? A perfect human-made grid. And the result is these vines that travel down and up, and they do it, in this marvelous, enchanting way. You see it in the, as you're driving through wine country, or in the paintings, or on wine labels. But for many years, I found that so attractive. And even though my brothers and I were always into wine and food pairing, the vineyard bug just bit me back in 2008. And we happened to have a property that was really, I think, sort of begging for it. So I will admit that I think we make very good wine. In fact, we've been told we do. But I got to give credit to the aesthetic element of nature and humans interacting in a vineyard that really is kind of the turn on for me. It always has been. So it's a fun operation. I'm the farmer. I have to deliver the fruit. My wife runs the business. It's an alcohol business. It's not easy. And my eldest son works with the winemaker to make the wine. So it's a family operation. We enjoy it, really, truly enjoy it.
Congratulations. That's That
Thank
sounds
you.
really very exciting. And I am curious about something. When you think about, there's the architect as artist, and then there's the architect as someone who has to run a firm. Any tips that you can share about making sure that the architect stays the artist and the business stays,
Yeah. Well, that's
operating and
great. No,
segmenting
that's a
these
great,
out? Mhm.
yeah, beautiful question. Actually, I'm on a panel with that exact theme at West Week. That's coming up at the Barker Hangar in Santa Monica. But anyway, the answer to your question is, through the years, I always had a bit of an entrepreneurial spirit. I knew pretty early on that I wanted to create my own business. In fact, in college, my brother said to me, he said, look, if you're going to be an architect, you need to take business classes. So I did that, and I could speak the language. But look, I mean, I'm lucky enough to know that through the years, as the business started to evolve, I would always get people who knew what they were doing to do those things.
Okay.
So I've, to this day, I've been able to stay focused on, my strengths, which is working with our clients and the visualization and conceptual design work. And I've got a managing partner, Duan, who is amazing, and he allows me to do what I do best, because I'm so confident that he and his, our leadership team, they run this business better than I ever did, truly better.
That's great.
So, I would say that the key to a lot of our success is, first of all, having a vision that's bigger for a company than yourself or profit or things of that nature. We always firmly believed that good architecture, good design raises the human spirit, elevates the human spirit. I think, again, most cultures recognize that easily. Our culture is younger, and I think it's going to happen. I think it's very much happened in the South Bay in the last 20 years. But the idea that beauty is an essential ingredient to life is really important. And we know beauty. Beauty, they often will say, is not objective, not subjective, what have you. Look, we know when we look at something, we know scale, proportion. We understand the relationships. We find beauty in an amazing flower vase, or beauty in a violin and in the curve, or the human figure. We are, deep in our DNA is an ability to appreciate things that are beautiful. And we do the same thing with buildings. We do it with homes. We know instantly if something is pleasing to the eye. We also know instantly if something isn't. There's a lot of stuff in between, and they can be very subjective, there's no question. But the fundamentals of scale, massing, proportion are inert to us. Wow. And I think that it's incumbent upon us to create beautiful objects. So when we look at a home, we often look at it as a sculpture, as something. And we look at it as proportion and scale, materiality, and being authentic and genuine with the materials. These are the things that survive the test of time. These are the things that make these homes something that, decades and decades from now will still be pleasing to the eye. And, so I think it was a great question. I love that. I actually did a TED Talk called The Beauty Switch, where I talk about that in a little more detail. You only have about 12 minutes in that platform, but that allows you to condense it down to get the point across quickly. But I do argue that beauty is essential, that without beauty, much like water, air, or love, we would cease to exist as human beings.